Have you ever held a piece of the past in your hands? A faded photograph, a worn-out book, or a stack of letters that were never meant for you to see? Today, I have a story that began exactly like that, with an old wooden chest I found tucked away in a dusty flea market. Inside, beneath a false bottom, I discovered a lifeline, dozens of letters exchanged between a young man named James and the love of his life, Lydia, during the darkest days of World War II. At first, it seemed like a familiar story, a soldier's promises from across an ocean and a young woman's hopeful prayers from the home front. But as I read on, their words revealed something more. These weren't just love letters. They were a map, a trail of coded messages hiding a secret James discovered on the battlefields of Europe. It was a secret so beautiful it was worth dying for, and so dangerous it would remain buried for years, its truth holding the power to completely change his family's destiny. This is a story about the incredible distances love can travel, and the weight of a promise kept across time and tragedy. It's a puzzle, and together, we are going to piece it together, letter by letter. So before we open the first letter and step back into 1944, if you believe that some stories deserve to be told, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our journey into the past. And as you listen, I truly want to hear from you. What choices would you have made in Lydia's place? What do you think is worth protecting at all costs? Share your perspective in the comments below, and let's uncover this incredible story together. Today, I want to share a story that found me unexpectedly, a story that wasn't written in a book, but was folded away in a box. I was at a sprawling flea market just outside Dayton, Ohio, the kind where every object seems to hold a faint echo of the past. Tucked away under a table of dusty tools and tarnished silverware was a small, dark wood chest. It was unremarkable, bound with simple iron straps, smelling faintly of cedar and thyme. I bought it for a few dollars, thinking it would be a nice place to store old photographs. It was only when I got it home and was cleaning the interior that my fingers brushed against a slight unevenness in the bottom panel. A false button. My heart quickened with that unique thrill of discovery. Prying it open gently, I didn't find gold or jewels. I found something far more precious, a stack of about 50 letters tied together with a faded blue ribbon. The paper was brittle and yellowed with age, the edges soft to the touch. As I untied the ribbon, a single, perfectly pressed white flower fell into my lap. An edelweiss, a mountain flower, a symbol of rugged beauty and bravery. The letters were written in two distinct hands, one a strong, steady cursive that slanted forward, full of purpose, the other a more rounded, elegant script that spoke of patience. These were not just letters, they were a lifeline, a bridge of ink and paper stretching across an ocean torn apart by war. The first letter I opened set the scene. It was from him, James, and the postmark was faint but legible, April 1944. My dearest Lydia, it's strange to be writing this from a place that feels like a different planet. The training is grueling, and the nights are filled with the sounds of 1,000 men trying to remember what home feels like. I find myself closing my eyes and picturing you on the porch swing, the scent of your mother's climbing roses in the air. I hold on to that image, Lydia. It's my shield against the noise and the fear. They tell us we are preparing to fight for freedom, for everything we hold dear. When I think of that, I don't think of flags or anthems. I think of your smile. I think of the life we promised each other. They don't give us much time to write, but I wanted to send these words before we ship out. I don't know where we're headed, but I know where my heart is. It's there with you, in that small house on Elm Street. Keep it safe for me. Tell your father I'll make him proud, and tell your mother not to worry, though I know she will. I love you more than words can say. Don't forget me. All my love, forever. James. As I read those words, I could almost feel the weight of his pen on the page, the desperate hope of a young man on the precipice of the unknown. This was the beginning of their story, a familiar tale of love and war. But as I sorted through the letters, I noticed a subtle shift. The early letters were filled with longing and reassurances, but later, the tone began to change. James was no longer just a regular soldier fighting in the infantry. He had been assigned to a special unit, and with that new assignment, a shadow of secrecy crept into his words, a hint of a burden he carried that was heavier than any standard-issue rifle. In a letter from late 1944, he wrote a line that sent a shiver down my spine. "They've given me a task here, Lydia, one that has more to do with preserving beauty than with destruction. But beauty, I'm learning, can be the most dangerous thing of all." Lydia's replies were the other half of this conversation, the anchor holding James's drifting world. Her letters, written on thin, almost translucent paper, painted a vivid picture of the home front. They were a tapestry of love, resilience, and quiet strength. While James's world was one of chaos and uncertainty, hers was one of routine, rationing, and a constant, gnawing worry that she tried so hard to conceal behind cheerful news from home. Her rounded script filled the pages, a stark contrast to the sharp, hurried lines of his later letters. One from May 1944, a response to his first letter from training, was particularly telling. "My darling James, your letter arrived this morning and I've read it at least a dozen times. I carry it in my apron pocket as I work in the garden. The Victory Garden is coming along nicely. We'll have more tomatoes than we know what to do with. I picture you here with me, complaining about the weeding but secretly enjoying the sun on your back. Don't you worry about being forgotten. You are in every thought, every prayer. I've taken a job at the parachute factory. The work is long, but it feels good to be doing something, to be part of the effort that will bring you and all the other boys home safely. The noise of the sewing machines is deafening, but sometimes I pretend it's a symphony and every stitch is a note of hope being sent across the sea to you. Dad is as proud as he can be. He carries your picture in his wallet and shows it to anyone who will look. Please, my love, be safe. I know you are brave, but don't be reckless. All I need is for you to come home. My heart is not just safe with me, it is beating for the both of us until you return. I am waiting for you, always. Your loving Lydia." Reading their exchange, I was struck by the vast distance between their realities, not just in miles, but in experience. The time it took for these letters to cross the Atlantic must have been an agony of waiting. A question asked in May might not be answered until July. A reassurance sent in August might arrive long after the crisis had passed. This silence between the words was a character in itself, a vast, empty space filled with fear and hope. Then came the letter from James that marked the true beginning of the mystery. Postmarked from France in December 1944, the paper felt different, thinner, almost fragile, and the ink was slightly blurred in one corner, stained by what looks like a drop of rain or a tear. His handwriting was less steady, more rushed. He had seen battle. He wrote of the bitter cold, the churned-up mud, and the ghosts that haunted the shelled-out villages. And then, buried in a paragraph about scavenging for supplies, he wrote the first coded message. "We were clearing a bummed-out chateau near Bastogne. The things you see, Lydia, opulence turned to rubble. It makes you wonder what's worth saving. Speaking of which, remember the treasure we used to bury in a tin box under the old oak tree? The one with your grandmother's locket? I've found a new one. This one sings a sadder, older song, and I have to make sure it gets home safely. I've named it the Silent Nightingale. Keep that name in your heart. It's important." This was the moment the letters stopped being just love letters. They became a map. And as I would soon discover, a map leading to a secret that was both beautiful and incredibly dangerous, a secret that James was desperately trying to protect from the heart of a world at war. Lydia's world, so carefully constructed with routines of walk, gardening, and writing letters, was shaken by James's mention of the Silent Nightingale. I found her response tucked between two of his. The paper is slightly thinner, a sign of wartime rationing, and her usually composed handwriting has a subtle, anxious tremor. She was a practical woman. Her letters are filled with tangible details of life in Dayton, Ohio. A coded, poetic phrase like this was entirely out of character for the straightforward, earnest man she loved. It must have felt like a stone dropped into a calm pond, the ripples spreading outwards with uncertainty. She doesn't ignore it, nor does she panic. Instead, she addresses it with a gentle, probing concern that is so characteristic of her voice in these letters. "My dearest James, your letter from France arrived safely, and I thank God for it every day. I cannot begin to imagine the things you are seeing, but please know that I am holding you in the light. The phrase you wrote, the silent nightingale, it is beautiful and haunting. Is it from a poem you've read? Or perhaps a song you heard? You know I've never been as poetic as you, my love, but the name feels heavy with meaning. Whatever it is, I will keep it in my heart, just as you asked. I am keeping everything of yours safe here. Winter is setting in properly now. There was a frost this morning that covered everything in a layer of silver. I had to cover the last of the rose bushes to protect them. At the factory, we are working longer shifts. There's a new push for supplies, and the feeling in the air is one of grim determination. We all listen to the radio every evening, tracing the lines on the maps in the newspapers, feeling a strange mix of pride and terror. Every town in France or Belgium that is mentioned, I wonder, is James there? Be warm, my darling. I've enclosed a new photograph of me. It's not very good. I feel I look tired, but I wanted you to have a piece of home that is new. I am smiling, and that smile is real because I am thinking of the day you come home. Oh, my love, always. Lydia. As the narrator, the detective of this paper trail, I can feel her reaching out through the ink, trying to understand the shift in her husband. She is giving him an opening to explain, to reassure her. But his reply, which must have arrived weeks later, only deepens the mystery. He ignores her gentle questions about a poem or a song. Instead, he integrates the code into the fabric of their shared memories, making it something intimate and secret, for her eyes only. My Lydia, the photograph is my most prized possession. You look beautiful, not tired. You look like the future. Things here are difficult. The winter is cruel, but our resolve is stronger. I cannot say much, but the work I mentioned continues. As for the nightingale, think of it this way. Keep it safe in the highest branch of our old oak tree. Remember how we used to say that was our secret spot, high above the world? Only you would know how to get there. It is safe there, in that high branch, until I can come and bring it down myself. The key to its cage, as always, is the promise we made on the porch swing. Hold that key tight. Reading this, I had to pause. He was building a metaphorical world for her, a secret place in his letters to hide something real and tangible. The highest branch wasn't a place, it was an idea, a level of secrecy. The key wasn't metal, but a memory, a promise. Lydia must have realized then that this was no flight of fancy. This was serious. James was entrusting her with a secret, piece by painful piece, from thousands of miles away. The love letters were still there, but now, between the lines filled with longing, was a hidden narrative of danger and duty. To understand the weight of James's secret, I had to step away from Lydia's quiet home front and try to imagine his world in the winter of 1944. As part of the Monuments, Fine Arts, and Archives program, the famed Monuments Men, his duties were twofold and often contradictory. He was a soldier, trained to fight and survive, but he was also a custodian of culture, tasked with finding and protecting centuries of art and history from the ravages of war and systematic Nazi looting. His letters from this period are less frequent and the details are sparse, censored by the army and by his own caution. But the tone speaks volumes. I can picture him in the Ardennes forest, amidst the chaos of the Battle of the Bulge. A young man from Ohio, who likely had only seen great art in books, now finding masterpieces hidden in the salt mines of Germany or the cellars of crumbling French castles. It was in one such place that he must have found the silent nightingale. His next letter, postmarked January 1945, is written on the back of a captured German requisition form. The paper is coarse, and his script is small and tight, as if trying to contain the enormity of what he has to say. Lydia, my love, the fighting has been intense. There are moments when the world is nothing but noise and blinding white snow. But we press on. A few days ago, we entered a small, heavily damaged estate that had been used as a command post by a high-ranking SS officer. In the wine cellar, beneath a pile of rubble, we found a hidden compartment. Most of the art was gone, but one piece was left behind, perhaps in their haste to flee. Lydia, It is a small painting of a girl holding a bird. Her eyes, they seem to hold all the sadness of this war. It is exquisite, but it is also dangerous. From documents left behind, I know this painting was the personal prize of the officer, a man known for his cruelty. He called it deafening, the silent nightingale. I have reason to believe his network, the men who helped him plunder these treasures, are still active. I don't trust the official channels right now. Everything is too chaotic. I cannot let it fall into the wrong hands. I have secured it, and no one else knows. The nightingale's cage has a number, 738, and it bears the mark of a dragon on its frame, the officer's personal crest. Remember that. Dragon, 738. This was it. The secret laid bare, but still wrapped in the thrilling danger of his circumstances. This wasn't just a soldier's sentimentality. This was a man in possession of a priceless, stolen artifact, who believed himself to be its sole protector against a shadowy enemy. He was putting Lydia, his unsuspecting wife in Ohio, at the center of his dangerous mission. She was now the keeper of the identifying details, the only other person in the world who knew the nature of his secret treasure. The burden he had placed upon her, the fear she must have felt, is impossible to fully grasp. But the most terrifying part of this letter wasn't the secret it revealed. It was what came after it. Or rather, what didn't. This letter was postmarked January 19th, 1945. After that, nothing. For 2 months, Lydia's world was filled only with the deafening sound of silence from across the ocean. Those 2 months of silence, from late January to March 1945, are a palpable presence in the wooden chest. They exist in the letters Lydia continued to write, letters sent out into a void, each one a testament to a hope that was slowly fraying. As the narrator piecing together this timeline, I find this section the most heartbreaking. Her first few letters after James's Dragon 738 message are filled with a forced, brittle cheerfulness. She doesn't mention the painting again, as if speaking of it might endanger him further. Instead, she writes about the weather, about a neighbor's new baby, about a funny mishap at the factory. She is trying to maintain a thread of normalcy, a beacon for him to follow home. But as February bleeds into March, the tone shifts. Her elegant script becomes a little messier, the loops a little tighter. The cheerfulness evaporates, replaced by a raw, desperate pleading. February 28th, 1945. James, my love, it has been so long. I tell myself the mail is slow because of the fighting. I tell myself you are simply too busy, too exhausted to write. I tell myself 1,000 things, but in the dark, when the house is quiet, the fear is a living thing. Just a word, my darling. Just a single word to let me know you are safe. I check the mailbox 12 times a day. The postman knows my face now, the look of hope that dies a little each afternoon. Please, James, I am trying to be strong, but my strength is you. Without a word from you, I am adrift. I can see the faint indentations on the page where her pen pressed down hard, the ink slightly darker on the words, so long. She was pouring all her fear and love onto these pages, sending them across the world with no idea if they were being read. She was keeping her promise, holding onto the key of their love, but the lock was a world away, and she didn't know if it still existed. Then, the silence was broken, but not by James. Tucked among Lydia's unanswered letters, I found a small, crisp envelope. It was an official telegram from the War Department dated March 22nd, 1945. The paper is stark and thin, the words typed with a cold, mechanical indifference that is more chilling than any emotional prose could be. There are 3 faint fold lines, as if it had been opened, read, and folded back up countless times. Regret to inform you Sergeant James M. Harrison reported missing in action since the 10th of February, 1945 in the vicinity of Herken Forest, Germany. Stop. Further information will be forwarded as it is received. Stop. The Secretary of War sends his deepest sympathy. Stop. Missing. Not wounded. Not killed. Missing. It is a word devoid of certainty, a state of suspended agony. For Lydia, this piece of paper was not an end, but the confirmation of a nightmare. The silence now had a name and a date. It meant that for over a month, While she had been writing letters, praying, and waiting by the mailbox, James had been gone, swallowed by the chaos of a battle in a dark, unknown forest. This telegram, more than anything else in the box, feels like the true weight of war, impersonal, final, and utterly devastating. It marks the moment Lydia's private fear became a public, documented reality. In the aftermath of such a devastating blow, one might expect the correspondence to end. What more could be said? The box could have simply become a memorial to a love story cut short. But then, about 2 weeks after the official telegram arrived, another letter appears. The envelope is different, a standard military issue V-mail, the handwriting unfamiliar, a bit rough and hurried. My hands trembled slightly when I first unfolded it. A letter arriving after a man is declared missing can only mean one of two things. It is a final, delayed message from the man himself, or it is a letter of condolence from someone who knew him. This was the latter, but it was so much more. April 5th, 1945. Dear Mrs. Harrison, my name is Corporal Robert Miller. I served with your husband, James, in the MFAA. He was my sergeant and my friend. I am writing to you against regulations, but I feel you have a right to know what I know. The official report says he is missing, and I pray to God every day that is all it is. On February 10th, our unit was ambushed while transporting several recovered items from a forward collection point. It was bad. James was a hero. He saved my life and the lives of 2 other men, organizing a defense that allowed us to fall back. But he was wounded in the process. We saw him being overrun and taken prisoner by a German patrol. He is not dead, Mrs. Harrison. I saw it with my own eyes. He was alive when they took him. That is not the only reason I am writing. Before he was taken, in the middle of the fight, he grabbed my arm. He was bleeding, but his eyes were clear. He made me promise to write to you if the worst happened. He said, and I will never forget it, tell Lydia the nightingale is with the shepherd. He repeated it 3 times. The nightingale is with the shepherd. I don't know what it means, but it was the most important thing in the world to him in that moment. I hope it brings you some comfort. James is the bravest man I have ever known. We are all praying for his safe return. Sincerely, Corporal Robert Miller. This letter changed everything. As the narrator, I felt a jolt, as if the entire story had been thrown into a new light. This single piece of paper transformed the narrative from one of tragic loss to one of tortured hope. James was alive, a prisoner of war. The silence was explained, but his secret, the secret of the painting, had taken on a new, urgent dimension. It was no longer safe with him. It was with the shepherd. Who was the shepherd? A code name for a person? A place, perhaps a church named the Good Shepherd? Or was it another layer of metaphor, a clue Lydia was meant to decipher? This letter, born of chaos and courage, had reignited Lydia's hope, but it had also deepened the mystery, placing the fate of the silent nightingale in an unknown pair of hands. Corporal Miller's letter was a double-edged sword for Lydia. It sliced away the terrifying possibility that James had simply vanished, but it replaced it with the concrete horror of him being wounded and in enemy hands. In the wooden chest, I found the letters she wrote in the following weeks. They are no longer addressed to James, but to official bodies, the American Red Cross, the War Department, even a desperate, heartfelt letter back to Corporal Miller, thanking him and begging for any other detail, no matter how small. Her handwriting is once again firm, but this time it is the firmness of a woman on a mission. The vague hope for a letter has been replaced by a dogged, methodical search for information on prisoner of war camps. As the narrator, I can almost feel her sleepless nights in the pages of these letters. And alongside them, I found a loose sheet of notebook paper filled with her script. At the top, she had written the 2 clues she possessed, the silent nightingale and the shepherd. Below, the page is covered in frantic brainstorming, a mind racing to solve a puzzle from an ocean away. Shepherd, a person's name? Miller? No, he didn't know. A place? Church of the Good Shepherd? Is there one near Bastogne? A code name for a unit? For a plan? Shepherding, protecting. A protector. This piece of paper is a testament to her intelligence and her desperation. She was not just waiting passively. She was an active participant in James's secret, trying to piece together the fragments he had sent her. Then, in May of 1945, the war in Europe ended. I can imagine the church bells ringing in Dayton, the factory whistles blowing, the joyous celebrations in the streets. But for Lydia, and for thousands of women like her, VE Day was not an end to the war. It was the beginning of a new, agonizing chapter of waiting. The lists of liberated prisoners would be coming. Was James on them? Was he healthy? Would he be coming home? The summer of 1945 must have been the longest of her life. The letters in the box from this period are few. The time for writing was over. The time for waiting had begun. She would have watched the ships and trains return, bringing soldiers back into the arms of their families, each reunion a fresh stab of pain and yearning. And then, in late August, when the national joy over the final victory in the Pacific was still fresh, a different kind of letter arrived at the house on Elm Street. It was in a thin, foreign-looking envelope postmarked from a displaced persons camp in Austria. The handwriting was elegant, looping, and utterly unfamiliar. It was not from James. This letter is perhaps the most important document in the entire chest. It is the key that unlocks the final secrets of James Harrison and the Silent Nightingale. The letter itself is written in French, on 2 pages of incredibly thin, almost transparent paper. Tucked with it is Lydia's translation, written in pencil on a separate sheet, her handwriting shaky but clear. The letter was from a man named Father Etienne Dubois. He was the shepherd. August 18th, 1945. My dearest Madam Harrison, I write to you as a humble servant of God and as a friend to your husband, James. He spoke of you so often. You were the light in a place of profound darkness. My name is Father Etienne. Before the war, I was a parish priest in a small village in the Ardennes. During the occupation, I was part of a network that helped to hide precious art from the Nazis. For this, I was arrested and sent to the Stalag IXB prison camp. It was there, in that terrible place, that I met your James. He was brought to the camp in late February, weakened by a leg wound and the brutal winter. He was assigned to my barracks. He was a quiet, noble soul who carried a great burden. Over the weeks, we became friends, 2 men from different worlds bonded by a shared, sacred duty, the protection of beauty. He confessed his story to me, the story of the exquisite painting he called Die Stummy Nachtigall. He knew he was unwell, madam. The conditions in the camp were severe. He was determined that if he did not survive, the painting would. He entrusted its secret to me. I must tell you now what my heart breaks to write. Your husband, my friend, succumbed to pneumonia in the camp infirmary on April 22nd, 1945. He passed peacefully in his sleep. It was just 2 weeks before our camp was liberated by American forces. I was with him at the end. His last words were your name. He died a hero, not only for his country, but for the future of a world where beauty is cherished, not destroyed. He made me promise, should the worst happen, to contact you. He wanted you to know his fate, but he also wanted you to complete his mission. The painting is safe. He was cleverer than anyone knew. He told me he managed to create the painting, listing its contents as old canvases and frames, and addressed it to your family home in Dayton before his final, fateful mission. His last message to me, for you, was this: tell Lydia the Nightingale is already home. It's waiting for her in the attic. I had to put the letter down after reading that. The tragedy is immense, to have survived so much, only to fall at the very end. But the revelation is breathtaking. Lydia, in her grief, received the final piece of the puzzle. The treasure wasn't lost in the chaos of Europe. It wasn't in the hands of a stranger. James, with incredible foresight and courage, had sent it on its own journey across the ocean. The Silent Nightingale had been in her house the entire time, a silent witness to her months of grief and waiting. The secret was home. The discovery of Father Etienne's letter is the climax of the wartime story, but it is also the beginning of a new, quieter, and perhaps more profound chapter. The box contains no more letters from Lydia to James. There was no one left to write to. Instead, the focus shifts entirely to the legacy he left behind. The grief and the closure delivered in that single foreign envelope must have been overwhelming. In one moment, she learned of her husband's final heroic days, and in the next, she was told that his last mission had ended in her own attic. As the narrator holding these artifacts, I tried to imagine that day. I see Lydia holding the priest's letter and her pencil-scribbled translation, her world irrevocably altered. I picture her moving through her quiet house, every object a memory of a life she was supposed to have with James. And then, her slow, deliberate climb up the creaking wooden stairs to the attic. The air up there would have been thick with the smell of old wood, dust, and stored memories. The light, filtering in through a single grimy window, would be hazy and dim. Tucked in a corner, just as the priest's letter promised, was a plain, army-issue wooden crate. It had been sitting there for over 6 months, an unassuming box stamped with military transit markings, addressed simply to her. It had been a ghost in her house, its true nature unknown, waiting silently while she wrote desperate letters and waited for news. The sound of her prying open the lid must have echoed in the stillness of the house. Inside, just as James had planned, were several old, unremarkable canvases meant to deceive any curious eyes. But beneath them, wrapped carefully in a coarse, olive-drab army blanket, was a rectangular object. Her hands must have been trembling as she folded back the rough wool. And there it was, the silent nightingale. I can only imagine the torrent of emotions, profound sorrow, a fierce pride, an overwhelming sense of connection to her lost husband. In her hands, she held the beautiful, dangerous thing he had given his life to protect. She would have seen the girl with the sorrowful eyes, the delicate bird in her hands, the masterful brushstrokes that seemed to glow even in the dim attic light. She would have traced the frame, finding the small, intricately carved dragon, the officer's crest. And then, turning it over, she would have seen the small, painted number on the back of the canvas, 738. It was all real. Every coded word, every secret fear, was confirmed by this single, beautiful object. It was not just a painting, it was James's last letter. It was his final, defiant act against the darkness, a testament to his belief that some things were worth dying for. The discovery in the attic solved one mystery but created an entirely new burden for Lydia. She was now the sole guardian of a priceless piece of stolen art. The war was over, but James's warnings about the dragon's network and the dangers surrounding the painting were still fresh. What was a grieving war widow in a small Ohio town supposed to do? For several years, it seemed she did nothing. The correspondence in the wooden chest goes quiet for a long time after 1945. As the narrator, I can only surmise that she rehid the painting, perhaps in the same crate in the same attic corner, and went on with the difficult business of living. She was protecting James's legacy, but the secret must have been a heavy one to carry alone. But she wasn't entirely alone. The next batch of letters in the box, dated starting in 1949, reveals that she maintained a correspondence with the one other person who shared a piece of her story, Corporal Robert Miller. He was her living link to James's final moments. His letters are kind and respectful, checking in on her, sharing news of his own life as he, like so many others, tried to build a new future out of the ashes of the war. It is in a letter from the spring of 1950 that Lydia finally breaks her silence. Her handwriting is steady now, the script of a woman who has weathered the worst of her grief and is ready to act. She confides in Robert, telling him the full story of Father Etienne's letter and the incredible truth that the painting had been in her attic all along. "And so it is here, Robert," she wrote. "This beautiful, sad painting. For 5 years, I have kept it hidden. I have been too afraid to do anything else. James was so insistent on the danger. But it feels wrong for it to be hidden in darkness. It is a piece of history that James died to save, and it does not belong to me. I feel I owe it to him to see his mission completed. You knew the situation over there. You knew him. What do you think I should do?" Robert Miller's response, which arrived a few weeks later, is the final turning point in this paper trail. He had clearly never forgotten his sergeant's final moments. "Lydia," he wrote, "I've thought about that day and that painting more times than I can count. I've done some research over the years. The SS officer was from a powerful German family with connections that survived the war. James was right to be cautious. But times have changed. There are official channels now, safe ones. I have a contact, a curator at the National Gallery in Washington, D.C., who was also with the MFAA. He is a good man. He is the one to contact. He will know what to do. This letter marked a new chapter. Lydia was no longer just the keeper of the secret. She was about to become the agent of its final destiny. The decision she made next would not only honor James's sacrifice, but would change her family's future in ways she could never have imagined. Robert Miller's letter provided Lydia with a path, a safe way to finally complete the mission James had started. The next series of letters in the wooden chest marks the transition from a private secret to a matter of national history. The correspondence is no longer personal, but formal, typed on heavy letterhead from the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. Lydia, following Robert's advice, had written to the curator he mentioned, a Mr. Alistair Finch. His initial reply, which I found carefully preserved, is professionally cautious. He thanks her for her letter, acknowledges the tragedy of her husband's loss, but makes it clear that they receive many such inquiries. He asks, very formally, if she can provide any specific identifying details about the artwork in question. It was the moment of truth. Lydia's next letter, a carbon copy of which she kept, lays out the secret she had guarded for years. The painting is of a young girl holding a bird. He called it the Silent Nightingale. The back of the canvas is marked with the number 738, and a small, carved dragon is part of the frame. The curator's next reply is anything but formal. The letter is typed, but the signature is hurried, and there is a handwritten postscript at the bottom that betrays his excitement. Dear Mrs. Harrison, he wrote, the details you have provided match those of Girl with Finch, a long-lost masterpiece by the Dutch master Godfried Schalken, a contemporary of Vermeer. It was famously looted from the Mendelssohn family collection in Amsterdam in 1942 by SS Oberfuhrer Reinhard Schmidt, a man whose personal crest was, indeed, a dragon. The painting has been presumed destroyed. If what you say is true, your husband did not just save a piece of art. He has recovered a piece of history we thought was lost forever. What followed was a carefully orchestrated plan. Mr. Finch arranged for Lydia to travel by train to Washington, D.C., all expenses paid, bringing the painting with her. I can only imagine what that journey must have been like for her. A woman who had likely rarely left Ohio, now traveling across the country, carrying a national treasure in a specially prepared case. This was the final leg of the Nightingale's long, secret journey. The meeting at the National Gallery must have felt like a scene from a movie. In the quiet, sterile environment of a conservation lab, away from the public eye, Lydia would have watched as the scholarly Mr. Finch, with hands as gentle as a surgeon's, unwrapped the painting. The narrator in me pictures him speechless for a long moment, simply gazing at the girl with the sorrowful eyes. He would have authenticated the artist's signature, the number on the back, the dragon crest. And then he would have looked at Lydia, not just as a widow, but as the final, crucial link in a chain of heroism. Your husband was an extraordinary man, Mrs. Harrison, he would have said, his voice thick with emotion. And you, in your quiet guardianship, have honored his sacrifice in the most profound way. The journey of the Silent Nightingale did not end in that Washington lab. Its final destination, as Mr. Finch explained to Lydia, was not a museum wall, but home. The painting belonged to the Mendelssohn family, and a painstaking international search began for any surviving heirs. This process marks the final chapter in the wooden chest. Months later, the search was successful. The sole survivors of the family were two grandchildren, who had escaped to America as children and now lived in New York. The last letters in the box are not from soldiers or curators, but from a young man named Daniel Mendelssohn. His letters to Lydia are filled with a gratitude so profound it feels sacred. The painting, he explained, was not just an asset. It was the only tangible thing he had left of the grandparents he had lost in the Holocaust. In recognition of James's heroism and Lydia's 5 years of faithful protection, the Mendelssohn family insisted on giving her a substantial finder's fee, a portion of the painting's insured value. For a working-class war widow in the 1950s, the sum was life-altering. This was the first fulfillment of the story's promise. It changed her family's destiny, providing a financial security she had never known. The painting's return became a quiet but significant news story. James Harrison was posthumously awarded a medal for his service with the MFAA. His name, and Lydia's, was celebrated in a small article about the repatriation of stolen art. Tucked at the very bottom of the chest, I found the faded newspaper clipping headlined "Lost Masterpiece, Saved by Ohio Sergeant, Returned to heirs." But the true legacy was not the money or the medal. The very last item in the box is not a letter, but a handwritten note on the back of a photograph of a young boy, Lydia's son, born after the war, a child James never met. The note is dated 1965. "To my son," she wrote, "this box contains the story of your father. The money he provided us is a gift, but this story is your inheritance. It is a legacy not of wealth, but of courage, of integrity, and of the unwavering belief that in a world full of darkness, it is our duty to protect the beautiful things. That is the true treasure of the Harrison family." And so, my journey with these letters comes to an end. Here in my hands, I hold the remnants of it all. The letters of love and war, the coded secrets, the official telegram, the faded newsprint, and the single pressed edelweiss that started it all. The story of James and Lydia proves that the greatest secrets are not about what is hidden, but about what is protected. And the destiny that was changed was not just financial, it was the forging of a family identity, built on the foundation of a father's quiet heroism. The silent nightingale had finally found its voice, and it sang a song of love, sacrifice, and the enduring power of a promise kept. And so, we close the lid on the wooden chest. The letters are read, the secret is revealed, and the story of James and Lydia finds its final, bittersweet piece. It began as a simple love story, a lifeline of ink across an ocean, but it became so much more, a testament to a quiet, enduring form of heroism that is rarely seen. Their story reminds us that history isn't just made on the grand scale by generals and politicians. It's also forged in the quiet courage of ordinary people. In a soldier who, surrounded by the chaos of war, chose to protect a single piece of beauty. And in a wife who guarded that promise with unwavering strength for years, long after she had lost the man she loved. The true treasure was never the painting itself. It was the legacy of integrity, the belief that some things are more important than our own lives, and that those are the stories worth passing down through generations. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey. Sharing these discoveries with you is a privilege, and it's your curiosity and empathy that bring these paper memories back to life. Now, I would love to hear from you. What part of James and Lydia's story touched you the most? Was it his sacrifice, or her long, faithful vigil? Perhaps their story reminds you of a piece of your own family's history, a story of love, loss, or a secret kept from a past generation. Please share your thoughts and connections in the comments below. I truly read everyone and believe our shared histories connect us all. If you believe, as I do, that these echoes from the past deserve a voice, please subscribe to the channel and become a part of this community. There are so many more stories waiting to be found. Until we meet again for our next story, take care.